Hello and welcome back to Alice Talks Football and welcome back to another live Manchester United news, transfer news and takeover update news show. And finally we have news. I feel like a lot of the news that we've had lately is like news that we've kind of already known and it's just kind of been news but just said by a different journalist in a different way. I feel like a lot of the news lately has been almost quite regurgitated. But today we actually have some really interesting new news. Obviously, a lot of it we kind of already knew regarding the takeover. Like Qatar obviously is going to be at Old Trafford tomorrow. So Jim Ratcliffe's going to be at Old Trafford Friday. But we've got news sort of coming out today, and the real story I want to get into, which I'm going to dive right into. I'm going to get into the news as quick as I can. But the real interesting story coming out is that basically the Rain Group had warned the Glazers that they need to do the full sale, and this kind of story that the Glazers know that they kind of realistically have to do the full sale now. This is kind of the story coming out that the Glazers know that how the fans will react if they stay. And this article coming out by Ben Jacobs, which I do want to dive into in a second, which I think is really interesting. But guys, please do smash that like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. It's looking positive. I just want to say, Qatar are 100% in for United. Qatar are winning the race, and the Glazers have been warned not to stay. But this is the Glazers. They don't do what they're told. They do what they want to do. And just because there's a lot of positive news today doesn't mean that we're getting Qatar. I think we will probably get to Qatar. I think the news indicates that we're most likely to get Qatar. But as I've said, it doesn't mean loads and loads. So I want to dive into some of the stories. I want to dive into some of the news. I feel like I want to get into the news right away. So the first story that came out, this was from Simon Stone, and we spoke about this in this morning's video, is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is set to be at Old Trafford on Friday to receive a presentation on the potential sale process, and representatives of Qatar's Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad al-Thani are due at Manchester United on Thursday. So again, Simon Stone's a very reliable journalist, and we've had Laurie Whitwell and about 6-7 journalists corroborate the story that came out last night that Qatar and Sir Jim Ratcliffe are on their way to Manchester this week to sort of get the sale done, etc. That was the initial story that came out. And then it said officials will attend presentations on the legal financial side of United. Jim Ratcliffe will go, but for Qatar, they're going to send a representative to go. So that was kind of the news that came out yesterday. It was kind of confirmed. But I want to get into the new news that's come out today. And more importantly, there was a really interesting thing I read that the Glazers prefer Qatar over Sir Jim Ratcliffe, not only because Qatar's richer, but as businessmen, the Glazers have identified opportunities in the Middle East and they want to have a good relationship with Qatar. Was this interesting kind of thing I read and saw. And I wonder what your guys' insight was on something like that. But sort of all this news around the Glazers having a favour for Qatar. They want to build relations with Qatar, etc. But I just realised my screen. I thought I had my screen on, but it didn't as well. Go get the deal done, Sheikh Jassim says Paul. I agree. For some reason, I thought I was sharing my screen, but I'm obviously not. So let me get that up there. So as he said, Justin, insiders maintain that the Manchester United sale process remains on track and a deal is within reach by the end of next month, despite fears elsewhere that there could be, a deadline. Again, good source of information saying, the basically, because there was this kind of news report that came out literally like a week ago, kind of saying, oh, it's very unlikely that the Glazers is going to sell on time. This could drag to June. This could drag to July. And I always said, with this story, you don't know. Is it the Glazers having second thoughts? Is it the Glazers pretending they want a minority stake and pretending they're going to drag the deal as a negotiation tactic to get more money out of Qatar like Mike Ashley did? But there was obviously those stories going around that, the club might not be sold right away. The Glazers can take as long as they want. And then the story coming out today from insiders reportedly is actually different. It's basically saying, the deal will be probably wrapped up in the next month, despite rumours. And this is coming from inside sources that have allegedly said this and allegedly said that this deal could be happening la-di-la. So I think that's a big positive for United. But again, continuing on, because I've got a lot to get through, and I'm only going to be live for 45 minutes instead of an hour tonight, just because I'm aware the Champions League is on and some of you will want to watch that. But this was the interesting story that came out. It said, breaking, a delegation representing Sheikh Jassim's bid for Manchester United will be at Old Trafford tomorrow. Some of his most senior personal advisors will be there. They're expecting to visit the United training ground. He remains 100% committed to buying 100% of United. So this was the interesting thing. We obviously knew that Qatar were interested in United, but there were stories saying, that certain things would have to happen for them to get United. But they're saying, Qatar's 100% committed and they want 100% of United. And the real news coming out today is confirmation that Qatar 100% committed to United. We know that PSG and UEFA have approved this reportedly. We know that people back in Qatar have approved that Sheikh Jassim can do this. So we know there's no blocks in the way of Qatar now. We also got told that despite rumours that the sale was going to be delayed, the sale was now reportedly going to happen on time. The Glazers favour Qatar over Sir Jim Ratcliffe because they want good links in the Middle East, because they identify that as a good area for future business. So lots and lots of positives in regards to the sale of Qatar, and obviously the news coming out today that they're winning the race. They are the favourites as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see where this Qatar story goes, because obviously nothing's done yet. This is the second round of bidding. Elliott Group put the second bid in, Jim Ratcliffe put the second bid in, Qatar put the second bid in, and reportedly a couple other parties that haven't been named that are in for United will put the second bid in. And then they will go to a third and final round of bidding. But the feeling from a lot of reliable sources is that Qatar is the favourite. And, it's one of those where I think it will be Qatar or the Glazers stay. I think the reliable sources are heading towards Qatar. From what they've heard, they're heading towards Qatar. And, it's a realistic assumption to make. They've got the most money. They want United. There's reasons why the Glazers would want to sell to Qatar. But you just don't know with the Glazers. As I said, you don't know what their moves could be. But I want to get into, obviously, the Glazers kind of being warned about staying once my screen stops freezing as well. Alice, what do you think of the Randu Kolo? I think it's bullshit. And the reason I say that is he's not worth 100 and something million. I was saying we're going to spend 100 million on him. I think he's a decent player, but I think the fact that apparently United are paying 100 million on him, I don't believe the story in a second. Considering he was basically 3 last summer. I think maybe we'll be linked to him in the summer, but I don't think that United would spend the money they're saying we're going to spend on that player as well. Alice, you seen the Mason Greenwood scarf they were selling outside Old Trafford at the Southampton game? Really? Like what? Like Man United fans or like Southampton fans as a wind up? Because, I mean, I know he's not been charged and he is a player and a lot of people love him, but it's a bit like, I wouldn't feel right wearing one. It just wouldn't feel right wearing one because you just don't know what happened there. So if someone has been selling them, I think that's a bit dodgy, isn't it? I don't know if anyone else heard of that. That's the first I've heard of it as well. Dwayne says Glazers are a virus. Qatar in like a strong immune system. Out you waste of flesh owners, says Dwayne. 100%. Smash the like button if the Glazers are waste of space owners as well. Hi Alice, this still needs to be done 1,000,000%. I just want what's best for our club. Glazers out and get the guys in fast. 100%. Well, the feeling is here that he remains 100% committed to buying United. But let's actually get into the news. So I'm going to just quickly get into some of the stuff that you might find a little bit repetitive, and then I want to get into Ben Jacobs' story, because Ben Jacobs' story is the main story I want to talk about. So Laurie Whitwell, very reliable journalist, said, Justin, Sir Jim Ratcliffe and representatives of Sheikh Jassim's meeting with Manchester United this week is being billed as stage 2 of the process and is expected to include a look into the club's finances, la-di-la-di-la. We also know from Dawson of ESPN that stage 2 is meant to be wrapped up this week. Now, I want to quickly get into this before I get into the story I want to get into, because I thought this was quite interesting. And I don't know if the Glazers have put this out as a game, or this is true. It said, new, as many as 8 groups are in discussions with United about the club's ownership. Now, potentially there could be 8 groups interested in United. All the reliable journalists have said 3 or 4, so I'd be really shocked if they're 8. But Telegraph, good source. The thing is, with sources like the Telegraph, Samuel Luckhurst, Simon Stone, they do put out what Man United want to put out. Often they are putting out what United want to put out. And I always wonder, with the second bids coming in, if would I put it past the Glazers and the United team to put out stories that there's 8 groups in there, in the sense of a negotiation tactic? We want Qatar and Sir Jim Ratcliffe to think there's 8 groups interested in United, not just each other and the Elliott Group. I think it's just Qatar, Sir Jim, and the Elliott Group, and maybe there's a 4th one. That's what I think. But maybe the Glazers want them to think there's more out there that they don't know of, so that when they come in with their second bids, it's a lot higher, because next week is second bid week. And I said this in my video last night. I said next week will be the week where there's going to be a lot of stories that come out, and a lot of them will come out from good journalists, but a lot of them might not necessarily be true. I think a lot of the stories that are going to come out next week on the takeover are going to be things that these journalists have almost been told to put out by those close to the Glazers, and it's a big negotiation game. When we sign a player like Sancho and 1 minute United can't afford him, then the next minute they buy him and it drags on, and 1 minute Dortmund want this and United want this, and they try and make it look like it's far apart, but it's all this negotiation tactic, and United always get played in the end anyway because they're shit negotiating. I think it could be something like that. I really think it could be something like that. It could be like, I think there could be some negotiation tactics going on, because I don't know if, I mean, 8 parties might be interested, but from reliable sources, they're saying 3 or 4. I do think that maybe this is potentially a game from the Glazers as well. Continuing on with the story, because as I've said, there's a lot to get through as well. This was obviously the interesting story, and this was confirmation from Jamie Jackson, Jamie Jackson's been very good in terms of his news throughout the transfer window, very good. And he said, Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad al-Thani is emerging as favourite to buy Manchester United head of surgery in Ratcliffe. And then just to put that into more detail, actually, because that's quite short, he's saying, Qatar winning the race, Qatar a favourite, essentially. And maybe it won't work. Maybe it won't work. For some reason, I just want to find this tweet. Is it going to work? Is it going to work? Is it going to work? There we go. It was also said here, breaking, Sheikh Jassim bin al-Thani is currently the favoured bidder for Manchester United of the Glazers, due in part to his potential to open business opportunities in the region with American owners. So this was a really interesting, this is something I've not thought about before today. And now Jamie Jackson mentions it, I think, you know what? There's a lot of benefits for the Glazers dealing with Qatar. And maybe it's just me, maybe it's just me speculating. And I guess because I want the Glazers out and I want Qatar, I'm always looking at every story to find a link to Qatar and the Glazers and like a positive, I guess. But, the Glazers have spent a lot of time in Qatar. They're at the World Cup. They spent time around Christmas in Qatar. The Glazers have been spotted in the Middle East a lot lately, especially Qatar. They seem to have a good relationship with a lot of people out in the Middle East, especially Qatar, where they've been spotted. They were spotted in Qatar like end of December. They've been spotted around Qatar a lot. They've been spotted in the Middle East a lot. We know they're doing potential business out in the Middle East. We know that they're money men. There's a lot of money out there. I do think the idea of having a good relationship with someone in the Middle East appeals to them. And I do think if it's between Qatar and Sir Jim, I think Qatar, 1, can outbid Sir Jim, but 2, I think the Glazers might look at this Qatar thing and go, obviously this is a deal, but we want to stay on Qatar's good side. We want to, maybe this is something that could be considered, because there's a lot of benefits for the Glazers with Qatar. They're very powerful people, Qatar. They own a lot of things. And I think, the Middle East as well, Glazers want a foothold in that kind of industry of money. And I always think, that's something I've never really considered until recently. And maybe that's just me being a bit like positive and all that as well. But I don't know what your thoughts are as well. Glazer are disgusting. How is it that Manchester United are leaked? Did anyone see this? They are disgusting. But there was a video going around Twitter, and it was literally like the Glazers, not the Glazers, like Old Trafford flooding. Like the video going around Twitter, there was like the toilets had flooded. I don't know if you've seen the Old Trafford toilets. They generally flooded, and it was like it was like people were walking in. I guess essentially shit and piss at Old Trafford. We are Manchester United. We are the most historic club in the Premier League. We're the biggest club in the Premier League. But we've probably, Old Trafford is a lovely stadium, but in terms of how it's been looked after, it's shit. You look at our stadium, and Old Trafford's amazing. I've been there multiple times, and I love it. And it's such an amazing stadium. It's a big stadium. I think it's the best stadium in the Premier League. But it's not the best stadium in the Premier League if you look at it from an aspect of there's mold, there's leaks, there's rust. The toilets is an absolute mess. Like, I don't know what's going on with Old Trafford. There's always leaks. The toilets don't work. This doesn't work. We're the only team in the Premier League that doesn't have a proper electronic screen. And I sit there, and this takes me back to Ronaldo's interview. And I always say, Ronaldo said in his interview, when he first joined United 17 years ago, because he first joined United just before the Glazers, he said the facilities have not changed once. The owners before the Glazers, the facilities would change. Old Trafford would be updated. In their 17-year ownership, they've had to do bits and pieces here and there, because obviously Old Trafford would literally fall apart and the facilities would literally fall apart. They've had to do things here and there, but they've not done one real major renovation that's made things better. It's things they have to do for general health and safety. Old Trafford is leaking. Old Trafford is falling apart. Old Trafford is rusted. The toilets are flooding. It is an absolute mess. And one more reason to get them out, because they've been here 17 years and they've not thought about it once. And you know why it's going to cost 2 billion? You know why it's going to cost so much? Because had they just generally kept updating the stadium every couple of years and spent a little bit here and there, they wouldn't have allowed it to get so bad. But the facilities and the state of Manchester United has got so awful because of the Glazers. They've just completely let it go, and more reason to get them out, because they are absolutely ruining this club from top to bottom as well. I'm interested in buying United, but I'm too skint, says Paul. I mean, I'd love to buy United, but I'm also too skint as well. Scrolling down on the chat, because I'm a little bit behind as well. I'll be a parting gift to United if they sell to Qatar. I mean, we just need the Glazers to go, don't we, as well? And that leak in the North Stand, it's been happening for years on and off. It's the same leaks, the same problems on and off at Old Trafford. It's an absolute mess as well. But yeah, continuing on with the news. Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad al-Thani is currently the favoured bidder for Manchester United of the Glazers due to obviously the potential connections, la-di-la-di-la. It was also followed up by this statement, which I will get on the screen so you can just see it, because you guys prefer when I put things up as well as just say it so you can actually read it for yourselves. But just in, there's a sense that the Glazers have not warmed to Sir Jim Ratcliffe. There's a feeling that although it's between Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Qatar if it goes to full sale, and recent reports are saying it's more likely to go to full sale, so that would mean it's a one-on-one versus, you know, Qatar and Sir Jim Ratcliffe. The feeling is, if it does go to a full sale and it is a one-on-one between Qatar and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, you know, all of a sudden, you know, Qatar potentially leading the race, you know, because they haven't potentially won to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, which is an interesting way of looking at it as well. And this was the interesting bit. This was the bit I wanted to get into, that it took me about 16 minutes of waffle to get into. So I do apologize for that. But this was the interesting thing that I wanted to get into. It was said, insiders say that the Glazers remain determined sellers at the right price. So inside sources are reportedly saying the Glazers are determined to sell United. The Glazers still want to sell United as long as it's at the right price. That's what the inside sources are saying. So we had come out yesterday from Rob Dawson saying, you know, the aim is the full sale of United. It's looking more likely. The Rain Group's now prioritising the full sale. We've had, you know, insiders tell other sources that the priority is the full sale. We've now had insiders tell the Telegraph today that the Glazers remain determined sellers at the right price. So more and more sources saying, you know what, despite the recent news, it looks like, you know, the Glazers are more interested in the full sale. Continuing up with a little bit more news here as well. Just in, insiders maintain that the Manchester United sale process remains on track and the deal is within reach by the end of next month, despite fears elsewhere that the deadline could be extended. So not only is the sale process on track, but there's even insiders saying not only do they think that the full sale will happen, the insiders are saying, but they think the full sale will happen soon. They think that the sale's on track, which I think is another bit of interesting story as well. Continuing on, because again, I want to just get through the news as well. Because I really want to get into the Ben Jacobs story and get your thoughts on this and thoughts on it and just talk to you guys about it. But continue on. Also, smash that like button if you want to see Liverpool get battered by Real Madrid. It was also said sources maintain the process remains on track and that an agreement remains possible by the end of next month, despite fears that the date could be pushed back. So basically, the same thing said in other words. Basically, the agreement remains possible by the end of next month, despite fears. So basically, they're saying this deal could be possible. This deal could be done in April, which I think, again, really, really interesting. You know, we get told a lot. We get told 1 minute they want a minority stake, 1 minute they're going to drag this deal out until June, then the next minute we're getting told they want a full sale, and the next minute we're getting told that this could be done in the next month. I do think now the second bids are coming in. Now we know they've meeting Qatar tomorrow. Now we know they're meeting Jim Ratcliffe on Friday. After Friday, it's going to get serious. This weekend, the takeover of Manchester United is going to get real serious. I generally believe that. So it'd be interesting to see what happens next week, because reportedly round 2 stops. You know, there's Qatar visit, so Jim Ratcliffe visit, second bids, round 2 stops. Once round 2 stops, round 3 is where shit, like, it gets moving. Stuff gets big. Continuing on, and this is the interesting story that, again, apologise for taking me 20 minutes to talk about, but I said there was so much news that came out on the takeover today. You know, definitely been a briefing to the journalists, of course. But this was said by Ben Jacobs, that Rothschild's advisors have outlined to the Glazers in recent week the project impact of them remaining at the club. This has also been factored in fan outrage should that occur. So there's a report basically coming out that the Glazers have kind of been warned not to stay at United. From a financial perspective, they're saying, you know what, it might not be financially beneficial to stay at United because of this and that. Fan outrage, you know, you might get money for a minority stake, but that money could potentially run out and then you're back to square one. you know, fans obviously getting really excited for Qatar, and then there's rumours that you stay and look at it go down. The Glazers are actually sort of starting to get warned. You know what? If I were you, Glazers, I wouldn't stay at United. The fans won't be happy. There could be fan outrage. And I think this is really interesting. For the first time in a while, it seems that someone's really going to the Glazers and going, you know what? I wouldn't stay at United. I wouldn't do that as well. Alice, check Qatari tweets because Qatari tweeted something. Someone said Qatari has tweeted something interesting. Let's have a look. Oh, something happening. So Qatari has just tweeted something is happening, which is interesting here. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know who this journalist is. So this guy might know nothing and he might just be tweeting absolute shite. However, he's a journalist in Qatar. Qatar's a small country, very in the football space. I'm sure he knows footballing people in Qatar. I don't know if he is a reliable journalist or he's making it up, but he is a journalist. He is a credible Qatar journalist. And I assume because of how small Qatar is and how many followers he has, he probably assumes someone knows someone in Qatar. And he's saying something's happening. Now, he might be saying that because all the news right now is hinting towards Qatar being the next owners of United. There's a lot of, positive news, saying, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. A lot of news indicating that Qatar are going to be next owners of United. And he might just be jumping on that bandwagon of news and being like, you know what? Yeah, Qatar are going to be next owners of United. Bum, 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 bum. Potentially. Or he might know something because this guy has consistently been saying stuff for a while. He's been saying, Qatar will be the next owners. He's been confident Qatar will be the next owners. He's saying things will be wrapped up. We'll know realistically by the end of March that Qatar will be the next owners. He was saying stuff like, the Glazers were trying to delay the deal to get more money out of Qatar. He's been saying what we all speculate might be happening. I don't know if he knows this for sure, but he has put out information about why the Glazers are delaying the deal. They're playing a game with Qatar. They want more money out of Qatar, etc., etc., etc. So it'll be interesting to see, but I do think it's an interesting tweet, and he's someone that I do follow. I just don't know how credible Qatari journalists are, but I do think there's probably some credibility in that as well. Alice, I still have a feeling that Qatar will be our new owner because there will be bidding and the highest bid. That's what I think. The reason I think we'll get Qatar is because the Glazers are being warned not to stay at United. They're being warned of the financial consequences of staying at United, which means it goes to full sale. They refer to Qatar to Jim Ratcliffe. Qatar have more money than Jim Ratcliffe. The Glazers like money. The Glazers will sell to whoever gives them the most money. Manchester 7 says it's strange, though we're always told Jassim's bid was clear of the state-backed bid, and PSG, yet we are now told they cleared it with those parties. I mean, no one really knows. I think it'll all come out soon. I think that basically they are related to PSG, those people in Qatar, but they've got Sheikh Jassim to be the representative because he's not got a clear relation to PSG. But PSG are approving the bid. Those in Qatar are approving the bid because I guess Sheikh Jassim isn't actually that high up at Qatar. I think he's doing it on behalf of someone high up at Qatar, if I'm being honest with you as well. Sir Jim means debt for United. Yeah, I know people that would rather have Sir Jim than Qatar. They say, just better. In their opinion, they think he'd be better. I personally don't, because he's going to put debt onto the club. He's going to do what the Glazers did. But they like the idea of him being a Manchester guy, and they're not a big fan of stuff that happened in Qatar, and that's fine. Everyone's allowed their opinion. I know people that prefer Sir Jim. Personally, myself, I do think Qatar would be the better owners because Qatar come in, they buy the full club, they spend money, they take United back to the top, they invest in the stadium, they invest in the facility, they don't take money out. Qatar's general belief and vision is it's not about making money out of this club. It's about getting Manchester United to the very top. That is Qatar's belief. That is Qatar's vision. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows? But I do think Qatar would be the best owners. But you never know. There's always the way you can look at it and go, well, actually, you could say Qatar, yeah, they've been decent owners of PSG. They've made PSG a nothing club to an Mbappe, Neymar, this massive brand. Like, everyone knows who PSG is now. But have PSG won a Champions League? No. Are PSG constantly having manager, ego, dressing room problems? Yes. Have PSG spent a lot of money on a lot of crap? Yes. I would rather have, of course, someone like Todd Boehly or PSG's owners that spend a lot of money, even if some of the money they spent you believe is reckless, than the Glazers, 100%. That's not what I'm saying. But there's always the idea of Qatar's brilliant. It's a massive improvement on the Glazers. But is there someone better than Qatar? And I think potentially, yeah, because although Qatar have been good owners of PSG, I think Manchester City's owners have been better owners than Man City. I think Manchester City's arguably, you could argue, have the best owners in the Premier League because they seem to get everything right. City was a nothing club. Well, to be fair, Man City's owners do cheat, so I can also look at it that way. But there's the thing of Qatar's a bit like Todd Boehly. They spend a lot of money, but sometimes you look at the money they spend and go, oh, are they being clever with that money? Now, I do think, the Qatar have learned a lot from their mistakes at PSG, and I think PSG is continuing to improve. I think the Mbappe contract was a massive mistake, giving him that much power. But I do think as well, like with not Van der Sar, with Erik ten Hag, the way he wants, the kind of players he wants, I think there will be some kind of direction and strategy in a more sustainable way if Qatar come into United. And I wouldn't be shocked, and Romano said this as well, if United get new owners, it's very likely that John Murtough and Richard Arnold are gone. And I wouldn't be shocked if they potentially start looking at that sort of route with maybe someone like Edwin van der Sar. Maybe they sort of rebuild what Ten Hag had at Ajax. Because I think, if I was Qatar, I'd be looking at your Van der Sars, your Michael Edwards, your Paul Mitchells. I'd be looking at people that will do a good job with the money. Because, there's all so much for giving someone a load of money. But we've seen that United have spent the second most amount of money in the last 10 years, and we're nowhere near been the second best team. It's what you do with the money. So Qatar might go, cool, we've got the money. Now we've got to get someone good to spend the money. And then we've got to back Erik ten Hag. And I say this again, Ten Hag plus backing, we're back. I solely believe in Ten Hag. I believe Ten Hag is the manager. I think we've found that manager we've been looking for since Alex Ferguson. And now that manager, Erik ten Hag, he just needs the backing as well. Sir Jim would interfere too much with Ten Hag's system. I don't know what Sir Jim would do. I don't think I think he'd be better than the Glazers, but I don't know if he's got the money to really do everything we want to do, and there will be debt as well. So I couldn't tell you what Sir Jim's intentions were. Be nice if Real Madrid demolished the Scousers 7-0. Exactly. Smash the like button if you want Liverpool to lose 7-0, because I do as well. The Glazers, the greedy prats, all they want is money, 100%, which is, again, maybe a positive for Qatar because they could outbid Jim Ratcliffe's new as well. Any news on the ownership, Alice? That's exactly what we're talking about as well. And Rob says big news in coming weeks. And I generally believe, because if the second round of the sale is wrapped up next week, I generally and personally believe that we will have big news next week. So make sure you're subscribed, because I'm on 59,692 subscribers. I'm 8 subscribers away from 59.7k. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. Only 8 subscribers to go to hit that target. So please subscribe. But I generally sit here and right now I do think something's going to happen next week. I think we're going to get some kind of big breakthrough, some kind of big news next week about the stories, which I'm interested for as well. Alice, have you seen the toilet in Old Trafford? It shows how the Glazers haven't made any investment. Yeah, we were literally talking about that at the beginning of the video. Absolute disgrace that the Old Trafford toilet is flooded. There is kids. Do you know how many germs are in that toilet? How unhygienic that is? Someone could get generally ill from going into Old Trafford because the Glazers neglected it so bad. Hey, Alice, I prefer Qatar to take this big club. I believe that they will bring us back to the top where we belong. I believe that as well. Applying a loan to buy United isn't exactly a cunning move, which is what puts me off Jim Ratcliffe. And 17 years of neglect, Qatar are the only owners to get us back to the top. And I think Qatar, out of all the owners we've been told, 100% in my opinion, are the strongest as well. People saying they love Ten Hag. I mean, smash a like if you like Ten Hag. United have spent some money, but a lot of it was players that got resold, so it's left. United spent a lot of money, but the problem with United is they spent a lot of money on players that, one, you don't know if the manager wants, or they're getting a panic buy, overpaying, and it's the manager's third, fourth choice because we've been awful in the transfer market. If Jassim is the front of the QIA/PSG owners, that is a worry that they might have to bring some operation from PSG here. It's slightly different, but similar people involved. But it's different enough for United to get it approved, etc. Knock $1 billion off because of those toilets. You know what? For how expensive it is to go to Old Trafford, the state of the toilets, I couldn't believe what I was seeing as well. I couldn't believe it. But continuing on, because I haven't even got into one of the main things I wanted to talk about as well. And this is, I thought this was an interesting thing going on back to Sheikh Jassim, going on to the Glazers. It was said here by Ben Jacobs that Avram Glazer was expecting protests at the League Cup final, so not particularly surprised by the chants and banners. But sources say he felt it was important to attend, and he's well aware of the fan base's full sale. Now, I want to say, there were some fans that were right in Avram Glazer's eye line, and they had like a banner that was like Glazers get out, and there were some Qatar flags and stuff. The Glazers aren't stupid. The Glazers know we don't want them here. They're not stupid. They know we don't want them here, but they know we don't like them. They know there was fans obviously chanting Glazers out. They saw the banners at the game. The Glazers know that. The Rain Group have advised the Glazers to go for the full sale. Reportedly, other companies are advising the Glazers to go for the full sale. And this is because they say the fans will be outraged. They don't want you here. potentially if you stay at United, it could have financial implications, even if you get the minority investment you want, even if you back 10 this summer and spend at Old Trafford. The prospect of having Qatar, the prospect of having new owners and you announcing that, it's got fans so excited, as you can see by the share price rising, that if, you Glazers were to stay at United now, it could be costly. And the Glazers have been warned about staying. And there is a feeling that actually, while Avram and Joel Glazer, they think they might be able to make more money out of the club. They've got this minority investment offer that they've kind of always wanted, so they could stay at the club financially. They do know that this could also cost them financially, in the sense of this could be a really bad business move. Their hope, the Glazers, is that this would pass over and the fans would accept it, which is why I think they were trying to hush Qatar. But I think the Glazers might have come to the realization now that although they potentially are interested in staying and taking this minority stake, it will be a big risk. Because if there's outrage from the fans, it could actually cost them. It could also cost them a good relationship with those in the Middle East. And, is their greed going to be a costly deal? They know the fans don't want them here. They know that Qatar have given them a good offer. They know that people are interested in United. It would be silly to stay. It would be business suicide to stay. But what are the Glazers? Stupid businessmen. What are the Glazers? Silly. So would I be surprised if the Glazers stayed? Not at all. They are silly people. So it's one of those where you're like, ooh. But yeah, guys, please do smash that like button, and of course subscribe down below to Alice Talks Football if you're new. I do want to talk about a few things as well. 1 week ago, Sky Kavanagh said that Sheikh won't pay. This is called the negotiation game. Sheikh Jassim will be coming out with stories saying he can't afford to pay the price tag, and the Glazers will be coming out with stories saying they won't accept below this price tag. Whenever United sign a player, we can't afford them, and the team won't go any lower than that price tag. It's negotiation. Then we eventually buy the player. It will be this big game with United. I say this now. It'll be this big game. I generally think next week shit's going to happen. But I think a lot of the news next week will be news that the Glazers want us to hear and news Qatar want us to hear, because it will be a negotiation. It will all be going on in negotiations. I think the Glazers won't want to let out that they're actually interested in a full sale if they are. And if they want more money from Qatar, they might let out that they want a minority stake. Qatar aren't going to let out that they're desperate for United and they'll pay $6 billion, because Qatar know that United's not worth $6 billion because they've got to spend money clearing the debt and $2 billion on the club. So there's no, I think a lot of news. I generally do think a lot of news is going to come out in the next 2 weeks or so. So it'll be interesting as well. Wrong people doing transfer business for United, and I do think once we get new owners, hopefully getting people in that are good at transfers will be important as well. Tom says, greedy cockroaches, I hope they sell soon, can flush our memories down the toilet. I'll tell you what, we should make them lie in the toilet water floor in the Old Trafford Stadium and say, this is what you've done to our stadium, now lie and piss and shit. That's what we should do to the Glazers as well. The Glazers are one thing, but our directors are a disaster as well. $1 billion spent on trash, average players, massive wages. Who allowed this? 100%. Most important thing is that the Glazers go, and then I think the directors do gradually need to go. I still think it's embarrassing. Not that I wanted Rabiot, and we got very lucky that we turned out with Casemiro, and Casemiro was fantastic. So looking back on it now, it's not that bad because we got Casemiro and we didn't get Rabiot, and that's good. But the fact that, Murta was spotted in Barcelona and spotted in Turin, trying to get a deal for Frankie de Jong wrapped up and trying to get a deal for someone like Rabiot wrapped up, and he didn't get them wrapped up, shows how shit he is. Did I want Rabiot? No. But the fact that he went to Turin to get a deal for Rabiot wrapped up and couldn't get it done, the fact that he went to Barcelona with Richard Arnold, had a few beers, was saying in the pub that we're going to get de Jong and they didn't get de Jong, shows how incompetent those CEO and directors are at United. And if the United want to be a serious club under Qatar, 100% need to get new ones in as well. Andrew says none of it will put Qatar off. The club will eventually be worth double with them at the helm and can massively improve our revenues and profits. I agree. I genuinely believe if we have the success Man City have got, if in 10 years' time, let's say we've won 6 Premier Leagues in the Champions League, I think, and United are constantly at the top, in the top 2 title race, I think that Man United would be worth so much more than it is now. I think Qatar could potentially make United the biggest and best club in the world again. We're the biggest club in England, we're the 3rd best club in the world. But right now we're not the best club in the world, but we are the biggest club in England. But being the size of Manchester United, being in the Premier League, that's the biggest. I say this now: Real Madrid and Barcelona are bigger clubs than Manchester United, but Manchester United are in the Premier League. And I think being the size that Manchester United are, being in the Premier League, the financial gain of that, United is the dream club to own if you have the money, because you're going to have a lot of money to own United because it needs a lot of work, but it is the biggest club in the best league. And if you own a football club, you know that this Manchester United is historic success, its global brand name, the fact that it's in the Premier League, the size of the club, the size of the fan base, you know that this football club could be something massive. You look at what rich owners have done with nothing clubs like PSG and Man City. They've made them big clubs. You know, they've had to, you know, Manchester United's always been a big club. You don't have to do that, build up things to get the revenue going. We've always been a big club. So you look at what rich owners have done to nothing clubs. Imagine what rich owners could do to big clubs like United. And I think Pep is shitting himself. I think rivals are scared because I do think Manchester United, with Qatari owners, with Qatari investment, are on a dangerous course as well. Work is work, leaving soon, heading to watch Liverpool choke. I mean, if Liverpool get a win tonight, I'll be fuming. Do you know what? Did anyone see the Pep Julia Roberts quote? It made me laugh. So reportedly, Pep Guardiola beat obviously Leipzig 7-0, but he wasn't happy because basically he's a massive Julia Roberts fan, and Julia Roberts comes to Manchester and she goes and visits the team that lost 7-0, not the team that won 7-0. She comes to Manchester. She's not interested in watching Man City in the Champions League final, Champions League game. Julia Roberts has no interest in Manchester City. She comes to Manchester and she walks around an empty Old Trafford while Man City have a game on. And Pep is fuming because he's a Julia Roberts fan. And I think, you know what? You can have all the oil money you want, Pep, but you cannot buy the class of Julia Roberts. So, funny little story in the news today, actually, as well. Funny little story. Let me scroll down as I'm a little bit behind on the live chat as well. So, I do apologise for that as well. So, let me scroll down. Calling the Glazers stupid businessmen is ridiculous. They could sell for 5 times what they brought. I don't like them, but stupid. No, they are stupid, though. Yes, they can sell for 5 times what they brought because 1, inflation, and 2, the value of United's gone up, and that's due to Sir Alex. But the reason they're stupid is because if they were good owners, they wouldn't have had Arnold, they wouldn't have had Murta, they would have employed competent people like you see at Brighton. Because look at Benfica. If the Glazers had employed competent people, we'd have spent half the amount of money we spent in the last 10 years and probably got better players for it. If we had proper recruitment, proper scouts, work with the manager, you know, we would have spent probably half of the amount of money and had better players for it, which would mean the Glazers would have more money for their club and United would be in a more financially sustainable position. That's why I think they're bad owners. You look at Benfica, you look at Dortmund, you look at all these clubs, you know, it's about, you know, we spent all this money and got shit for it, but other clubs are spending this money and getting good because they're good people in. Liverpool, you know, they managed to win their first title in what, 20, 30 years because they brought Michael Edwards in, Liverpool's owners, who aren't much better than the Glazers, but they were smarter than the Glazers. Liverpool's owners have less money than us, a lot less money than us, but they brought in Michael Edwards to make the decisions and work under Klopp. And look, they got successful under Klopp. You know, the Glazers were smart. They would have brought someone really good in to work with Mourinho, work with Van Gaal, and actually get the signers they want. Not Woodward sign players that he wants that Van Gaal doesn't want. They would have backed the manager. We'd have spent less money. We'd have more success for it. And if we have more success, we generate more money. So that's why I think the Glazers are stupid businessmen. Obviously, they're going to profit on United massively, and it's all about money for them, and fair play to them for that. But they're not smart, because if they were smart, they wouldn't be in a position where they need to sell United. They wouldn't be in a position where the stadium's got this bad. Because I think if we'd have continued the Fergie success over the next 10 years, I don't think they'd be in a position where they need to sell. I think we'd have made almost double the amount of money. I do agree. Have to disagree that Barca's a big club than United. In this era, we have more clicks than anyone. I guess with Ronaldo coming in as well, that helped. And I think Messi leaving Barca, but Real Madrid's definitely the biggest. And I think United and Barcelona can argue for second place. Definitely. But I think it kind of alternates a bit. But I do think Barca is a massive, massive club. But I do think a lot of that is because of Messi. I think now Messi's left Barca, it's potentially gone down a bit as well. The big oil league, the Premier League is turning into the big oil league. I was thinking today, you know, I guess that, you know, Chelsea isn't oil money now, but they were oil money. So I'm going to count Chelsea in oil money category. You've got Chelsea with the oil money. You've got Newcastle with the oil money. You've got City with the oil money. You might have United with the oil money. You know what was really interesting today? And I don't know if you guys read this, but basically, there's a few people in other leagues, like the Spanish league, the Italian league, etc., kind of complaining about the Premier League and why there's so much money in the Premier League. Basically, rival leagues have been complaining about the amount of money in the Premier League. And I'll show you something, actually. I'll show you something if I can find it. I'll show you the amount of money in the Premier League because this is a really interesting graph. And I had to use this for a uni project, so I know all about it. So let me show you this. Because this is interesting. So this is the revenue of the big 5 leagues. So Premier League's always been a little bit on top. Just I think mainly because we're English, it's the most spoken language in the world. Because even though you know between 2011-12 and 2017-18, you had the whole Messi Ronaldo era. You know, La Liga had the 2 best players in the world, but you know even in this era, the Premier League was generating so much more. And we're in a position now where the England generate what 7,000 million euros. Which is like 7 billion. You know, Germany, you know, we're double. We are we are 3 times almost of Italy, 4 times almost of France, and we make about double the amount of money the Spanish and German leagues make. The Premier League, in terms of money made, it's just a complete other level. And rivals, Real Madrid, Barcelona, just the Italian and German and especially the Spanish rivals are getting really jealous about the money in the Premier League. So that's why they're actually really desperate for the Super League. Because if you actually go back to the Super League and you look at it, not Manchester United, but the reason the Super League stopped was because of the Premier League. The reason the Super League stopped was because there was outrage from the fans, but Chelsea pulled out, then Man City pulled out. And because Chelsea pulled out, and because Manchester City pulled out, United were like, shit, we've got to pull out now. Liverpool were like, shit, we've got to pull out now. And once the Premier League teams fall out the Super League's kind of gone, because PSG can't be in it because of, I don't know, something to do with the World Cup, wasn't it, at the time, and Qatar. The German teams can't be in it because of the way the German clubs are owned. So then it just became this Spanish-Italian joint league. And, Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Juventus were the 3 clubs that never backed down from this idea of the Super League, because they see how much money the Premier League's making. They see that, your Nottingham Forest in the Premier League, who are fighting for relegation, can spend 100 million. The Premier League clubs this January, and bear in mind, this January, in a 30-day window, the Premier League clubs this January spent more than all the other leagues in the summer, apart from the Prem. So if you combine how much La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, and Ligue 1 spent in summer, the Premier League outspent that in 1 January, because Southampton is spending money, Forest is spending money, Bournemouth is spending money. The teams are the 20th, 19th, 18th, 15th to 20th place Premier League teams almost have more money now than like top 6 teams in the other leagues, because the Premier League is where the money's at. And the rivals are getting jealous of the Premier League. And they were saying to you, some people in other leagues reportedly were trying to convince UEFA to stop the United takeover, because they see another rich owner going to the Premier League, another rich owner going to the Premier League. And the fear abroad is, wait a sec, this Premier League is becoming the Super League now. And people don't like that in the slightest, that the Premier League is becoming the Super League. But we are the Super League. We are the best league in the world. And we don't need the Super League because the Premier League is so good. Add Barcelona, Real Madrid, and one of the big Italian leagues to the Premier League, and that, you're not going to get a bigger league. But, we've got the Champions League. I think they're changing the Champions League formats. So because, some people will want the new Champions League format, la-di-la-di-la. But the Premier League is essentially the Super League now as well. But continuing on as well, people do want to stop the takeover of United because of that as well. Other leagues haven't done as much to make the matches interesting enough to watch. I think the big advantage of the Premier League is it's English. I think that another big advantage of the Premier League is in La Liga, it's Barca, Real Madrid, and I guess Atletico. In the Bundesliga, it's just Bayern. I mean, Dortmund are all right, but it's just Bayern. The Bundesliga is a very good league for Germany. What I've noticed about the Bundesliga is it's massive in Germany, but I think the Premier League is more massive all around. I think the Bundesliga is actually, in terms of a league, it's the best league in the sense of, actually, if you look at their fan base and their following, how passionate fans are, it's crazy. But the Bundesliga is Bayern, Dortmund's all right. Serie A, I do think actually is an interesting league. I think that you've got the 2 Milan sides, Juventus. I think that Napoli are a decent sized club. Rome have always got something to offer. I actually think the best league is the Premier League, followed by the Italian league, followed by the Spanish league. But I think the Spanish league had that massive boost with Ronaldo and Messi. I think the French league is the worst league, and I think the Bundesliga, obviously, it's a bit boring. I think the Premier League, right now, you've got Man City, Liverpool, that seem to be the top 2 clubs, but Liverpool falling off a cliff. You've got this emerging Arsenal side. Chelsea always, have a good season, have a shit season, have a good season, have a shit season. United are a massive club. The Premier League has 6 big teams. You could argue with Newcastle, the Premier League getting 7 big teams. Every other league is the big 2, the big 3, the big 2, the big 3. The Premier League has the big 7 now with Newcastle. Arguably, the big 7, there's always periods where only about 3 of the big 7 are any good. But there's always periods where, Real Madrid will be good, but Barcelona will be shit. I don't think Real Madrid particularly good this season. Real Madrid fans are actually crying on Twitter, oh, Casemiro, we was Casemiro. But the Premier League's got to this stage where it's just absolutely massive as well. We share revenue fairly. That's what makes it competitive and interesting. Other leagues are monopolised by a few big clubs. Yeah, and I think this is the one thing that United don't like. I think United, because United probably generates the most money, because Man United are the most watched team, followed by Liverpool. When Man United play Liverpool, it's more viewed than anyone else. It's Man U, Liverpool, then Arsenal, then Chelsea. They're the 4 most watched teams. I think City are actually 5th now, and Tottenham 6th. United obviously get lots of the views, but they do have to split a bit of that with Bournemouth and Forest and such. And that's the one thing that United argue. And the one reason United, and I think the Glazers were pushing for the Super League, is they knew that they could get more money through broadcast revenue. But I just say to United, get in the Champions League, do well in the Champions League, do well on the pitch, and you'll do fine in regards to broadcast revenue as well. Spain across the board is the toughest league. I think the Premier League is the toughest league, but I think the Spanish league is a difficult one in the sense of the teams are very well done defensively. And I think that the Spanish teams always give English teams a tough run in. But I generally look at the teams that are fighting for relegation in the Premier League, and I think that they would be fine. I think they would come 10th in La Liga. Maybe I'm being biased to the Premier League. You know, I look at Everton. Everton aren't a good team, but I reckon they'd come like 12th in La Liga. You know, I think like maybe Bournemouth would go down, but I do think that the Premier League, their 20 teams would all probably rank in the top 15 in all the other leagues. I mean, I generally think like Brighton could come second in Ligue 1 behind PSG. Although that Ligue 1, they always have a Lille or what Will Still is doing as well, really good with Reims. Apparently it's not called Reims. Apparently it's called like Rams or something. Apparently it's pronounced something weird, like it's pronounced something that's not sounded like, but 100% the Premier League is just crazy. Blackburn 1-0 up against Reading as well. So before I end the live stream as well, I do want to get into some final things. I do want to get into, obviously, let's have a look at the Champions League games. I know that obviously a lot of you will be raring to go and watch the Champions League games, so I get why the viewers will be a little bit lower than normal today. But that is calm. Chelsea beat Dortmund. Benfica, look, Matt, I tell you, I'd raid Benfica for like 4 players. I actually watched a bit of the Benfica game. Didn't care about the Chelsea game. Watched a bit of the Benfica game. But Bayern knock out PSG. So we've got Benfica, Chelsea, Bayern, Milan. Inter went through. Unlucky Porto. Man City, fuck me, 7-0. Bundesliga is such a farmers league. Napoli. I think it will be Real Madrid. I think Real Madrid will go through, and I think Napoli will go through. Napoli. Maybe I'm crazy. Low-key Napoli underdogs. I think Napoli are going to go far in the Champions League. I think this could be Napoli's season to do something mad. I think PSG are out. Man City always seem to bottle it. Liverpool will be out. I think Napoli, Real Madrid, Bayern. I think I'm worried this could be Man City's year because the only team I see stopping Man City, potentially Napoli could do something, but Real Madrid. Because I think so many big teams have gone out early. I do worry this could be Man City's year. I do worry about that, but hopefully not. Hopefully we'll get to see Liverpool be battered. Nunes, Gakpo, Jota, Salah, Fabinho, Milner in midfield. Hopefully he fucks that up. But just have a look at the game. But anyway, guys, please do smash that like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. Share the video. I'll let you guys go and watch the Champions League. I will be back in the morning with a video. Unless there's no news, then I won't be back in the morning with a video. But I will be back this time tomorrow for United versus Real Betis watch along. So make sure you're subscribed for the Man United versus Real Betis watch along. I know we are 4-1 up on aggregate, so it's probably not going to be like the most exciting watch alongs. We know we've won the game, but you know me, I'm committed to my United watch alongs. Luton also won up against Bristol, says Daniel. So subscribe for that. There could be a video in the morning, but only if there's news, because I don't want to. I try and do a video every morning and every evening, but I think the last few days the news has been a bit repetitive. So unless there's genuine news, you'll see me tomorrow live. Smash your like, smash subscribe. Thanks everyone for tuning in. See you next time, and